Welcome to the Infinity Loop Group. I'm Riley.
I'm Krista.
And thank you so much for joining us on this journey. Here we are deep into this book now. We're coming to the end, but we are coming up to the real juicy tools that we're really trying to teach that we believe can change your life. Look what love has done. When we heed our hearts that want to be free as a released balloon, our souls sing in the wind forevermore. Quote by Krista.
Mm-hmm. And what I was saying in that quote is really when we listen to our hearts, if we really access our hearts and live from our hearts want freedom. And it's freedom from ourselves, freedom from the small self that makes our lives very small. And the released balloon is very free.
Freedom from the judging ego.
Oh, that's so well said. That's exactly perfect transition for this. So this is about a specific person that it was extremely painful situation of the way she even intervened in my life in a not good way, a meddling way that we've talked about. It was a long friendship that ended very badly with a lot of judgment around it. It was actually during my divorce over 22 years ago, and the involvement with the custody of the children and enormous amount of pain. And she then subsequently faced some very painful things in her life. The heart of the mystic is not, look at the experiences I've had. It's, look what love has done in my life. And I just heard someone say that about mystic. I think it was James Finley. And I thought, oh, that's so interesting because that's the name of my poem. And that's all I could say is, look what love has done in my life. I saw your picture today on the internet, your life, your love, your children. My heart burst inside me with so much love for you. Your joy is my joy. Your children are mine. We are one and I am free. We said things that hurt. It wasn't the truth. Judgments don't have the power to name us. Only love names us. But we had forgotten, and so the space between us. But when I love you, there is no space. We are together, connected, free. I can only say I wanted this more than anything, to love those who no longer love me. I got what I wanted. All the love I feel for you is enough. Look what love has done. Probably wrote this in 14. When I realized it had happened to me, what once brought me pain because of the hurt was now only complete joy for the other. There was no awareness that their children weren't mine. They couldn't hurt me because the awareness of separation was gone from those I thought caused me the greatest pain. And that's what's so interesting is so much of our pain is because we feel the separation. We think what they have done is what is causing all of our pain.
I would say a lot of the pain too is the attachment to the small aspect of the story, right? The attachment to not the full story is what causes the pain, because once you have the full story, there is no more pain.
That's so profound. That's so true. That's something to really dive into what that means, because that is really true. It was me that was doing it to myself because I didn't know we were one. I got so sick of myself and my suffering, freedom from myself became my greatest longing. That's that when we heed our hearts that long to be free. I would say I was so sick of myself and my suffering. And I've said that before, but that would be over and over and over again. That's the longing that I responded to that was my way to freedom. Instead of medicating that and going, oh, Krista, you're not messed up. Look, you're better than this person. I literally just broke and cracked open of my own suffering that I knew that I was intimately creating. When we become free, we no longer believe the lies and we don't fight against the lies that were said against us. Even if they're true, they aren't the truth, and they don't have the power to name us. Our desire to love becomes our focus. And I will say about this relationship, I probably wrote it before 14, but she was someone who never, ever apologized for anything she did. It was probably a very troubled relationship from day one, where I was always one down to her. But when I tried to reconcile with her, she told me I had no character. And she was very dysregulated in her reaction about what she thought I should do during the custody. And that's such an interesting thing, is that I gave that power. Like, I needed someone to think differently of me. And I'm like, well, no, I mean, to say someone has no character, I'm like, really? No character? Like, it was just a lie that then I had to make her bad for saying that, when really it was me playing into that lie and my needing her to see any different. And again, not just going down a long path of a troubled relationship, of where I was dishonest for so many years in the relationship. But how I was able to come back to the deep connection by seeing things differently. Because it's about my capacity to love and our capacity to love, not about people loving us. And that is the freedom. That's really what we're looking for.
Well, I would say, too, because so much of someone's ability to love you has more to do with their ability to love themselves than it has to do with you and your behavior. Love heals our hearts and frees us from the pain that the illusion of separation brings. Have you had an experience like this one, or do you long for it in a certain relationship?
I would say, let us long for this. Let us long to be able to say, look what love has done, that we are able to experience something different than the pain of the separation, because it's about our capacity to love.
In what ways in loving others, them not loving us, all we ever needed to be free and happy?
Yeah, in what ways is loving others? Yeah, all we ever need to be free and happy. I believe that's true. I believe that is at the heart of what I believe.
Well, and I think the most important part of this is them not loving us.
Yes.
To love someone is not requiring them to love you, right? That's the true mystic step, to love those that don't love you, love your enemy type of thing.
And Byron Katie's great. She goes, everybody loves you basically in their true self. They're just confused. Right. She goes, oh, no. If they were in their true self, that everybody would love you. The heart of the infinity loop is the contemplative view, having infinity loop eyes that is able to see in the wider view and see differently.
We become aware of our connection, and then we don't need thoughts that make us feel separate, superior, or inferior, or important. Love comes in and sets us free from our illusion of separateness and creates suffering.
That creates suffering, yeah. When we become aware of our connection, it just is feeding on the other chapters, Riley, right? The aspen, that we're all one under the aspen.
It's one of those snowball effects of once you start seeing everyone as yourself and start loving yourself, so now you are loving everyone else, you start interacting with everyone else differently, and you start getting a more loving response from everyone.
You change the field. You change the whole field. You raise the vibration. You raise the level of awareness, because you are past your own constricted awareness of needing them to see you a certain way.
When you're choosing to see people in love, not choosing to see them in whatever shortcomings they come to you in that day.
Yeah, that is truly the second look, right? That is the contemplative view. I heard James Finley just say that. Even though I'm not you, I'm not other than you. Even though I'm not that tree, I'm not other than tree. James Finley loves to say that, but he actually didn't originate that. Another mystic did, and I have to think it's like, it sounds like an Italian name. I'll have to look it up who says that. He says, like, if you look at a tree, if you kind of objectify a tree, if you just look at it or just, you see it as separate. But when you contemplate that tree, you realize you're one. It's like when you just sit and there's no naming it. You're not naming the kind of tree it is. You're not judging the tree. You're not labeling the tree. You're just with the tree, you realize you're one, and then you start doing that to the ocean, to the tree, to the tangerine tree, to one another. That's infinity loop eyes. That's the contemplative view, that you realize you are one. That's what we come back to when we experience the lies. I mean, that poem, when I think about that, is, even though it's true, it may be true. I didn't have good character in disclosing something I should, but it's not the ultimate truth. Meaning, none of that has the power to name me. Maybe I made all these mistakes that were true, but it was not the truth. It did not have the power to shame me and name me as a label of who I am, to discard my humanity. And that's what we can then see about ourselves, and then how we treat one another.
If I look away, in Louisville at the corner of 4th and Walnut, in the center of the shopping district, I was suddenly overwhelmed with the realization that I loved all these people, that they were mine and I theirs, that we could not be alien to one another even though we were total strangers. There is no way of telling people that they are all walking around shining like the sun. It was like waking from a dream of separateness, superior self-isolation in a special world. Thomas Merton.
This is a very famous encounter, meaning famously known, about when Thomas Merton had this awakening of oneness. This is like his enlightenment. And it makes me cry, because I know you, Riley, have had this experience, and I have, where you go, how do you tell everyone that they're shining like the sun? And I remember even being in yoga class, I was just weeping, and we were just exercising. And I was like, oh my God, everybody is shining like the sun. Like, they're so beautiful. I'm in love with every human being. Like, everyone is so beautiful. And that is the awakened state of seeing how God sees us, and how we can see each other, as how seeing our divinity and humanity with so much beauty. So this is another poem that I wrote that was happening to me when I couldn't look at people, because I would start weeping. If I look away from you, it's not because I'm dismissing you. It's because you're so beautiful, you're shining like the sun. Your light is so glorious, I'm completely undone. If I look away from you, it's not because I find you uninteresting. It's because I can't contain myself. I'll lose my composure, appear as a lunatic. The lunatic I am, for love, of course, for the glorious love we all are. And I remember, I would say this was 13, 14, when this started really happening to me. And I couldn't look at people. And it still happens, just like I said, happened in the yoga. They're so beautiful, I can't almost look at them, because I will just start weeping. That is having a psychedelic brain, having the ability to see so deeply into people. And that's when I am coaching and I'm sitting with sometimes I'm undone, because I can feel like God is looking at them through my eyes. And may that be the fruit of this podcast, is that we all grow in our capacity to have infinity loop eyes of how we see one another. When we get used to the contemplative view that takes the second look, what we see is a beauty in others that will make our worlds enchanted. My suffering from my sense of separateness drew my heart to the deepest longing to end my judgments of others and see them beyond the first critical, separate look. That's the look of the ego. When we get past that look of the ego, like you were saying at the beginning of the podcast, that's what we see their beauty, and it's just blinding. When we want to be free from ourselves badly enough, we hunger and thirst after righteousness. That's what that means. We open the door for grace to come in. Infinite possibilities await.
What would it look like for your longing for an experience where you saw beyond the physical realm to someone's beauty that is blinding? What do you think we're seeing when we see that? I would say you're seeing their true soul. It's the shining light that is everyone's soul that is trapped in this meat sack.
Yeah. Isn't that amazing?
How does the poem serve as a reminder of how, when we see others through such love, we see the love that created them, sustains them, and is the truth of who they are under it all?
It's just, I was reading through this morning before the podcast, and it just immediately takes me. And I would say having a spiritual practice and going even back to these poems or back to mystical poetry puts us in that state where we are seeing differently in the contemplative gaze.
How do we see the beauty that is blinding in others more often? It's really just that practice of being present and finding a way to love everybody.
And you find the way by the second look. Like the first look is again our
judger.
As our judger, but it's also part of our survival brain. It's to keep us safe, and so we have to go. Ooh, suspicion. This person's not okay. We have to look at what's wrong to keep us safe, and that is even an evolutionary thing of our ancestors. Of is this person safe? Is it good? And it's also the ego. But when the ego's not in service, and that's the great thing that Thomas Merton said. He goes, we must not confuse psychological truths with spiritual truths. And so there's a psychological benefit. Like sometimes the mystics will really acknowledge their own failings and brokenness that can look like low self-esteem. But really, it's not. Like they actually really love themselves, but they also are seeing their wretchedness.
Acknowledging your shortcomings isn't the beating yourself up, right? That's not the voice that's destroying you. No, that's the voice of truth that's acknowledging that there are shortcomings that you present. You are not a perfect being, even though you are perfect and divine in your own way. There are always ways for us to grow. But just because we acknowledge our shortcomings does not mean we are beating ourselves up because of our shortcomings.
Right, exactly. And that's a big principle of the infinity loop. There's the two different fields that we're operating in the human element and the eternal element, the absolute element. And why am I bringing this in is
how do you bring it into the beauty?
Well, how do you bring it in? And I would say it's, when you are tied to that sense of abundance, which these poems immediately get me back into, there is no need to use anyone, objectifying anyone as, I can use them, like in the chapter on separateness. I can use them to feel better about myself. I can use them to get what I want. I can use them as I'm friends with them. And it's like all this tying to the ego versus being able to drop down. It's that second look again. And it's the contemplative. When you are just, like you said, Riley, when you are so just present, that is the place of the true self. There's no judgment. You're just in this pure awareness, which is going to take us into the next chapter. And then all of a sudden, like I could tell you, the hundreds of times this has happened to me when I'm so present, and that's where I'm waiting for the next insight of how to coach this person. It just cracks open and I see their beauty, and anything is possible at that point, because then they are benefiting from the mirroring that I'm giving them, and it's opening up to them parts of their brain and their capacity to see themselves and the situation differently.
I believe the more we step into the present moment and love others, it creates the container environment for them to love themselves, especially when someone is stuck in their own judgment of themselves and others. By breaking that, by just being the present and the loving self, I think is one of the quickest and easiest observable ways that we see ourselves changing the world around us.
That's so beautiful. And I sometimes feel like there's a little bit too much autonomy teaching going on, like you just need to love yourself. It's like, well, no, it's also how we are healing balm for one another, how we bring healing. It's the opposite of what they've experienced is healing. Oh, they've experienced judgment. They're going to experience unconditional love from us.
That love aspect is such a both and phrase of you can't love others till you love yourself. And I also feel like you can't love yourself till you love others. right? Both can be true.
Infinity loop.
Right, exactly. They're both self-fulfilling prophecies, right? If you only love yourself and you see everyone else as the enemy, you don't truly love yourself. If you only love others and never truly love yourself, then your actions aren't actually being loving from others, because they're probably coming from a place of control.
So this is it really interesting. When these two poems really came, it was so many years of feeling there was so much inner stillness in my life. There was so much practice in my contemplative spiritual practice, and things being stripped from me, that stillness, that emptiness was my way into the fullness of learning how to see myself and others different and experience. That was my liberation. The emptiness, the loss, the stripping away became the doorway in to waking up, to seeing myself and others through infinity loop eyes. Does that make sense?
It was
because it wasn't, I didn't have everything successful and going on, and this was all perfect, and I was so busy and blah, 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 and I was surrounded by all these people and everything was so great. I had to go to just detaching and letting go and letting go and letting go from the false self and all the things that I knew I was contributing to my own suffering. It was my attachment to my false self and my identification with the small self that was causing my suffering. And when I was letting that go, what came in is the spaciousness for the true self, which connects me to see the whole world differently. It's the abundance. It's stripping away everything that is non-essential, that we are attached to, that we think we need, that is life, that lifestyle is life, when what it is it's the life that you can have if you are in your cell alone with God, you know?
Yeah, I mean, we there's all these studies that prove that we are happier when we're serving. We're not happier when we are the king. Those are usually the people that are the most tortured, the ones that have it all, not those ones that are washing the feet.
You know, that's so interesting too, because another thing I was hearing James Finley talk about, you know, the contemplative spiritual practice and how that may come out in your life. And for me, it comes out in my service and it comes out in your service. Serving people, serving their life, looking out for them, helping them with their home. It just fills me to overflowing if it's a healthy relationship. And that's all part of being tied to the abundance, right? Becoming a servant of all.
Beautiful. Well, thanks again for joining us on this journey and listening to these wonderful poems. May this bring love and light into your life and allow you to see others with more loving and connecting joy, because ultimately that is our journey, is to connect and love each other more. May this communication reach you and help change your life. Please share and subscribe, and thank you so much for joining us on this journey. Till next time.